Welcome to the Hopenning. Cynthia Kane has had the privilege of guiding over 70,000 people to become more present, confident, and calm. She is a certified meditation and mindfulness instructor, a certified breath coach, the founder and CEO of the Kane Intentional Communication Institute, and the best-selling author of several books. The latest of these is called The Pause Principle: How to Keep Your Cool in Tough Situations. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hopenning. This is the place where hope is happening when we open our minds and hearts to new beginnings. And it is such a pleasure to have Cynthia Kane here with me today. Thank you, Cynthia, for joining me.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here with you. I really am.
You know, I was telling you off camera that I just finished the second book of yours that I've just listened to on Audible. And I just love them. You know, there's that part of me, of course, that's very un-Buddhist that says everybody should read them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it would be great if everybody read them. I think we'd all have really interesting conversations. It would be fun.
I think it would be wonderful. Can you imagine like how much time, energy, money, all of the rest of that, relationships, how much better it would be for all of humankind just to treat each other with the principles that you talk about.
Yeah.
So
it would change the world. It really would, I think.
It definitely would. Definitely would. So we'll get into your new book a little bit later. It's the pause principle. But first, let's talk a little bit about your background. You talk about it a bit in the book, How to Communicate Like a Buddhist, which was your first book. Is that right? Yeah. So if I were asking your best friend from high school what you were like in high school, what would that person say?
Oh, what a great question. I love my best friends from high school. Oh, it just makes me smile thinking of them. What would they say? They would say that I was a hardworking person. They would say that I was a good listener, right? That I was really open to listening and hearing different people's perspectives. I was kind of always the one trying to keep the peace, so not to, ruffle any feathers. So I didn't really express myself a lot. When I did, it was kind, but I wasn't really sharing a lot of what was real for me within me, because of just, being nervous kind of other people's reactions. And I think they would also say, that when I would get upset with things, I would shut down pretty quickly and I wouldn't talk very much. I'd get very quiet and become passive aggressive. And, I did have a judgmental streak in me as well, even though I was kind. But it's interesting because when I started doing more of the work that I do, I realized that it was kind, but it wasn't always honest, right? In my kindness. So yeah, so I feel like that's maybe how they would describe me, maybe.
I actually would have been described the same way,
Yeah.
somewhat. I think my siblings would have thought differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, my best friends in high school would have said the same thing about me. And I am so much like you in the way that the shutdown thing, not say a word. In your book, you called it a version of the silent treatment.
Yeah.
So, okay, my question is, are we born that way, or is that a product of our upbringing, which was a product of our parents' upbringing? Where does it come from?
I think it's both, a little bit of both, right? I think we all are born with our natural ways of reacting to certain situations, though it also can be it is also a learned practice as well, because it is something that we see growing up, or we learn from, those around us. So it's a bit of both. I think we are wired in a certain way when we come out, and then we take on certain qualities or characteristics that we see around us, whether our parents communicated in a certain way, our siblings, teachers, friendships, media, all of it really affects how we interact, because it really is a learned practice. But we are wired, each of us, with specific reactions.
Yeah,
Does that make
I
sense?
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Because if I can look at my siblings, they would react to the same situation that I am a part of and see it totally different,
Yeah.
and explain it in totally different ways. And yet
Mhm.
we've got the same parents. We're
Yes.
being raised the same.
So my mom, she is a teacher. She was a teacher. And my father, he was a lawyer and then turned into more like of a businessman who ran companies. So my upbringing in terms of communication was really seeing that there that within relationships, it was challenging. Communication wasn't an easy thing. It didn't seem like an easy thing because it wasn't modeled to me as something that was easy. What I saw pretty much growing up was a lot of passive aggressive behavior, a lot of shutting down, a lot of walking away in really challenging conversations or moments, or just simply ignoring situations that need to be talked to. So it was, it was challenging for me, I think, because that's then what I mimicked in my own life. And a lot of my relationships, I didn't realize I was really the one who was creating a lot of the problems. I I really blamed the other person or the other people, because I was perfect. I didn't see anything wrong with what I was doing, because this was, what I'd seen growing up, and this has just kind of been what I had been doing, and you know, what was wrong with me, kind of thing. Um, so I never really had put myself under a microscope at all until I had to, really.
Something happened when you were
Yeah.
in about your mid-20s, right?
Yeah, so it was actually early 30s, late 20s, early 30s, where I lost my first love unexpectedly. And that really sent my whole world just on a completely different path. I really was really empty, quite blank. I didn't really have anyone that could help me in that moment. And it really was the first time where I realized it was all on me, absolutely all on me to take responsibility for my life, in terms of if I wanted to enjoy being here, or if I wanted to die along with him, or what have you, right? I mean, it was really just this time where I had to figure it out, and that was when I had to put myself under a microscope to really see myself clearly, and really look at myself with really honest eyes, which is so it's not an easy thing to do. Who really wants to do that? But I had to do it.
But isn't that how it usually is? That
Yeah,
there's, you're cruising on, you're just,
yeah,
and then suddenly something happens, some huge event happens, and you crash. And in order to get out of the bottom of the well, right,
yeah,
you have to
mhm,
claw your way out.
yeah,
So, what happened and he had been a long time, you had been with him a long time,
yeah, a long time. We had been
right?
together for about 7.5 years,
Right.
and we had been apart for the last four before he passed away, and then we came back together a few months before he passed away. And like kind of re-met each other in that time period because we wanted to grow apart because we had grown together so much. You know, we met each other when we were very young. We were 17 years old, you know, when we met, 18 years old. And so it was really this idea that we would separate and then come back together at the time when it was right to come back together. And then we were able to come back together, and then 4 months later he passed away. So it was really, I mean, it was the moment in my life that it's strange because it's something that is so painful and so sad, and yet from it came something so beautiful. And I feel like with the work that I do daily, it really honors him a lot, you know. So yeah.
You went to a retreat center where you
Yeah.
live, and
Yeah.
you
So
live
I tried a lot of different things. So at the time I was in New York. I
right.
was living in New York. And I had been, you know, I'd been reading a lot of books. I've been taking a lot of courses and kind of just throwing myself into anything to try to figure out how to feel better. And a friend of mine recommended a meditation and writing workshop at the Shambhala Institute when I lived in New York. And so I had never meditated before. I didn't know really anything about Buddhism. And I went, and that weekend, I mean, that weekend changed my world. I learned how to meditate, and it was the first time that I ever, even during what I was going through, was able to just be with myself without judging myself or evaluating myself or wanting myself to be different in any way, but really just allowing myself to feel whatever I was feeling. And that was truly liberating. And then I learned the elements of right speech in Buddhism, which are to tell the truth, don't exaggerate, use helpful language, and don't gossip. And I was like, this is it. Like, this is my way out of my discomfort right now, my way out of suffering. If I could just figure out how to speak in a kind, honest, and helpful way, I feel like, you know, I would be able to find my way through. And so that really started everything. The next day I thought, okay, how do I do this? And I started playing around and experimenting with trying to figure out how how to talk to myself first in a kind, honest, and helpful way. And then once I figured that out, it started rippling out into how I was communicating with others. And it just changed the way that I then interacted with the world and my environment. And it really just opened my world up in a way that I didn't have before. So,
And many, many others. You
yeah,
have trained or given courses to 70,000
yeah,
people.
yeah. It's a lot of people. Yeah,
It's a lot.
yeah, yeah. So it wasn't just me that it was working for, and I started writing about it, and then people started being interested in learning how to actually do it. And so then I started creating courses, and then I started a training program and, you know, work one-to-one with people as well. And it it's such a beautiful thing because I thought it was just something that I was doing on my own, and then I started sharing it, and then it started helping other people and changing people's lives. And I mean, that's what it's all about, really.
When did you write your first book? When did that one come out?
The first book came out in 2016.
So 9 years ago.
Yeah.
And what motivated you to write that book?
So that book was really motivated by the personal work I was doing at the time to figure out how to communicate in a kind, honest, and helpful way. I was really implementing and practicing a new way of communicating myself, and it brought into my life such beauty. And I had started a new relationship and was starting to implement these practices within my relationship. And it created this very healthy communication style that I had never had before in a relationship. And And so I just became really, really passionate about like this practice. And I started writing about it, and that's when the first book really came into being, like the actual practice of how do you communicate in a kind, honest, and helpful way. How do you implement it, right? Because in theory, it sounds very easy, but then it's not, you know.
So the title, How to Communicate Like a Buddhist.
Yeah.
Where did you get your title from?
So that came from, I had taken a course during this time, and it was in one of these courses, the woman that her name is Ashley Turner, and she does a lot of yoga, and she's also a psychotherapist. And in one of these courses, she had the phrase, how to communicate like a Buddhist. And that always had jumped out at me, like when I first took the course. And that was then what I ended up using for the title, because what I was actually doing was learning how to communicate like a Buddhist, right? In terms of the work that I was doing. So, yeah.
And I'm Catholic, I'm Christian.
Okay.
And yet so many of the principles,
Yeah.
they're just universal principles,
They are
right? They're
universal principles. And
kindness,
yeah,
being truthful and
yeah,
kindness and
yeah,
helpful.
yeah,
Those are universal principles.
they
It
are.
doesn't matter if you're Buddhist or Christian or
Mm-mm.
Hindu,
No.
anything. It creates a better world.
It really does. And also, you know, meditation to me is very similar to prayer. I mean, it's different
Yes.
in that in meditation, you know, like there's certain things that you're doing in meditation, but also just the idea of stillness, right? And connecting with something, whether it's within you or, you know, something bigger than you, I think is also sometimes I think that um, for a lot of people, Buddhism can lead them to trusting a higher power, right? Something that's bigger than them, whether they realize that or not. But yeah,
I think because they see the changes,
yeah,
right? They
yeah.
see the changes in themselves. I started to meditate about 25 years ago as a
Hmm.
result of a 12-step program.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was on the fence. It's a little
Hmm.
bit shady for me, just the word meditate,
Yeah.
and yet I started to. And then I could see the changes it made in me, in my interactions in everyday interactions. So I've been as faithful as I can.
Yeah.
But you're a mother. You've
Yeah.
got two small children, you're married, you've got
Hmm.
a big business that you run, a successful author. How
Hmm.
do you make time?
Yeah. So I really try to keep my days very simple, and not fully packed, so that I really give myself the space I need to be able to be present in the places that I want to be present for. And so for meditation, for me, it's something I do in the morning usually. I'll wake up before everybody else and I'll sit and I'll meditate. Or there are even days where I don't wake up before everybody else, but I know that I don't have to get my kids breakfast basically on the table until 7:50 a.m. That's the time I know, because I know it takes them this much time to get their meal done before we have to go to school. And so if I wake up at 7, which is the same time my kids do, I'm meditating in our room, and my kids will just run in and they'll sit there while I'm meditating, or they'll lay on me while I'm meditating. So for me, I really just try to incorporate it into my life so that it becomes very easy. It's not something that I have to force myself to do. It just naturally falls within it.
I think you said an important point. You said you leave space in your life for
Yeah.
it. And you're living in Washington, D.C.
Yeah. Hmm.
Busy. And
Yeah.
I'm in North America as well, in Canada.
Yeah.
So we know what our lives are like. It's like,
Yes.
watch the time,
Yeah.
7:50. We need to have our meal done because we need to get in the car, and they're better. And I'm only leaving at this time because I know that the traffic will be lighter.
Exactly.
All of that, right? So
Yeah.
we tend to fill our days to the peak. to the
Oh, yeah.
minute.
Yeah.
And so anything that comes across our path that's going to interrupt our time is cause for, for us to get a
Yeah.
little bit off balanced. And one of the things I really appreciated in your book was
Mm.
that there's a variety of meditations. You
Yeah.
offer us, there's a handful of different types of meditation. It's not just, right?
Yeah.
So can you give us a little bit of a run through first about the different types of meditations and when you would use them and why they're so useful
Yeah.
because of the way they are?
Yeah. So there, I mean, there's so many different kinds of meditation that are out there. And the meditations that I really am interested in or focused on more are really meditations that help us communicate, right? And so some of the meditations, there's a Meta-Lovingkindness meditation that is so beautiful, where you wish yourself loving kindness, you wish others loving kindness, right? You wish people who you're having difficulty with, that they may know love and joy and all of those wonderful things. And, you spread it out into the world, or like to those who are, having challenging moments at this time. And Meta-Lovingkindness is a fantastic meditation to do to help us cultivate more compassion. So not only compassion for others, but also self-compassion. And so that in those moments where maybe we're having a hard time connecting with somebody, or we're having a disagreement with somebody, or we're in, a challenging relationship, we get the opportunity to sit and to find a way to connect with this person, even though we're having difference of opinion or we're disagreeing. And by being able to foster that compassion, we're then able to have different types of conversations, right? So Meta-Lovingkindness is great to do if you are feeling disconnected from people. It's great to do if you are noticing that you're just not being as kind to yourself as you would like to be, potentially, right? Another meditation that is a great meditation to do is Vapasona meditation. And this is really where you let everything you're feeling be a part of the meditation. It becomes almost your anchor. So if you're feeling anxious, or if you're feeling worried about something, or if you're feeling really excited or really joyful, all of that gets to come through and just kind of sit with you while you're meditating. You're not trying to fix it. You're not trying to, hold on to it or push it away. You're really just seeing, can I allow all of these emotions that are here to be here? And can I kind of follow it and put my attention and see, does it get bigger? Does it get smaller? Just kind of what happens when you put your attention to the emotions. And the wonderful thing with Vipassana is that you start to really see things clearly. And that is really what we're trying to do in conversations. We're trying to really drop all of our distractions, drop the stories that we create in our heads, and can we just see the situation clearly? Can we understand what we're feeling in that moment, so that then we can talk to it in that moment, right? There's so many other meditations as well, but just those two are really quite powerful, I think.
Vipassana.
Yeah.
And if you were really overwhelmed with something at work, something at home, a loved one, I think what would happen to me is I would just cry.
Mhm.
I would just probably just start crying. And
Yeah.
then this little part of me would go, well, you're not supposed to be crying, Fran. This is a meditation. So actually, it's almost a permission,
Yeah.
right? You're
Hmm.
giving yourself 5, 10 minutes or whatever just to let go and not have to carry the world anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. And I love that idea, right? Because it's such a like freeing feeling to r- not feel like you're responsible for holding it all together, right? Or that you have to feel something different, or that it's a bad emotion to feel, or right? So we give ourselves that permission to just allow ourselves to be as we are in that moment, without evaluating anything that's happening or judging anything that's happening. It just is happening, right? And so it gives us that space that we need, that moment. And then it helps us throughout the rest of the day, because we're not as hard on ourselves potentially, or we don't have as much expectation and so on.
There's another meditation. I call it the messed up meditation. If I know that I messed up,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, why did I do that again? Why do I always do that? And then comes the whole bunch of
Yeah.
self-deprecating stuff that we
Mm-hmm.
do,
Yeah.
because we're humans, and mm, this path seems very easy for us.
Yeah.
So can you just touch on that one a little bit? I think you called it the suffering meditation.
Oh,
Something
so
like that.
Tonlin, that might be the one. So Tonlin is really interesting because what we do is we inhale the suffering that we're feeling. And usually we don't want that, right? Usually we want to ignore it or we want to push it away or get to the next thing as quickly as we possibly can. But with this, we're sitting and we're actually inhaling all the discomfort and suffering that we're feeling. And then the idea then we exhale light. So we're taking in and we're feeling what we're feeling. And we're just letting it be that way. And then we're exhaling out light and, happiness and kindness. So it's a bit like the complete opposite of what you would think we would do, right?
So what is it about meditation? It's, we're taking these 5, 10, whatever amount of minutes in our
Mhm.
day to either doing one of the practices that you talked about or a mantra or something. Why does it work?
Yeah. Well, what's fantastic now is that all the studies now are out and, they have really been able to see the changes that happen within our brain through meditation. And that, by doing meta-loving kindness, your insula gets thicker, like the gray matter, and that is the compassion piece, right? That's your emotional intelligence. And then your amygdala starts to shrink, which is your fear-based part, right? And that's where the anxiety lives. So we start to see that when we meditate, we're actually changing the brain. We're actually changing the makeup of it. And that's fascinating because then once that's in play, then it changes how we are interacting, how we're speaking, how we're remembering things, right? Meditation also really helps with memory, helps with insomnia. But it really is this moment that you think is doing nothing is doing so much, right?
It really, you think, do. We have to just keep on doing stuff. We have to
Yeah.
keep on reading and studying and all of the rest of that. Listen to the next YouTube video.
Yeah.
And yet it's all about going inside and just allowing the quiet to come in,
Mhm.
allowing
Yeah.
the space, like you talked about.
Yeah.
So in your practices,
Hmm.
like you say that poor communication is responsible for 70% of corporate error, and it could cost a business of 100 employees up to $420,000 a year
Yeah.
from poor communication. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, well, if you think about it, you can think of it in terms of, if let's say you are someone who works with clients, or, maybe you're in real estate, or maybe you are even an administrator within a school, right? You're an outward facing person in a company, right? If our communication is vague, if it's confusing, if, we're not getting across what we want to be getting across, we could potentially lose clients, right? We could have more difficult interactions, which cause more tension, which could leave, the other party not wanting to continue to do business with us. We could create kind of these situations within teams where people don't feel motivated or engaged. And so there's a lot of employee turnover that happens. Or, people can spend a lot of money on training employees and then based off of maybe one interaction or two interactions where they don't feel seen or valued or appreciated, they could leave pretty quickly, right? So you're looking at a lot of potential turnover and losing clients or not landing deals based off of the way that you communicate. So communication is everything. It really is.
Well, it really is,
Yeah.
because not only does it affect our home life, it does affect our job lives
Yeah.
as well. And,
Mhm.
even friendships and
Yeah.
the outside. So it does affect everything.
Mhm.
So what do you do when you train people? Like, how do you train? Like your new book, the pause principle, how to
Mhm.
keep your cool in tough situations.
That's it. Yeah. Mhm.
Like, do you go into a building and train a workforce, or like, even just, I know that just reading the pause principle would help, but you have
Mhm.
an organization that you run. You're the CEO and founder of your
Mhm.
organization. So what do you do as an organization?
So basically, when I work with people, I have a training program, right? And so in that training program is where I really teach people how to, usually what I say is that if you've ever gotten passive aggressive, lashed out, shut down, walked away, I pretty much teach you how not to do that, right? I teach you how to stay in the room, have a conversation, be able to express yourself in a way that is calm, clear, and concise, and that's compassionate, where you feel confident and you feel, genuine. And so the work I do really comes with learning a new practice of communicating. So you're learning how to listen to yourself. You're learning how to listen to others. You're learning how to express yourself in a clear, conscious, and concise way. You're learning how to use silence in a way that doesn't manipulate or power over, but how do you use it so that you can collaborate with other people? Or how do you use it so that you can take that moment and you can pause in a difficult conversation so that you know what direction to go next, right? So usually my work looks like, either within companies, it's workshops and giving workshops on, specific topics, whether it's how to handle difficult conversations or how to communicate in a more concise way or how to be more kind within the workplace or maintain boundaries, right? There's lots of different types of workshops there. And then the other is a lot of companies will pay for their employees to take my training program. So it's more of a group training. So people are all over the world and we're going through my video courses and then we meet for 15 weeks once a week. And then I also do one-to-one as well. So it's a lot of learning and implementing because the whole point is to be able to implement it into your day to day. I'm not, a lot of people will think of communication more as like a speaking class or a listening class, or like scripts, or, you break out and you do dialogue partners or role playing. And that's not what my work is. My work is truly learning how to implement this practice in your day to day because it's less about other people and it's more about yourself, right? It's more about figuring out how to navigate communication, how to navigate relationships. Hmm.
Okay, I need to
Yeah.
learn how to control my own emotions.
Hmm.
I need to learn how to take the pause. I need to learn how to breathe.
Yeah.
Do I need to know why I react this way?
No, you don't. You just need to know that you react this way.
So that is helpful, because some people, I'm a hypnotherapist, and some
Hmm.
people just don't want to know what happened. They don't want to
Yeah.
know the background. And that's perfect, because what you're saying is, from this day forwards, that we can all learn a better way of communicating, which
Yeah.
will help not only ourselves, but everybody around us. You've got small kids,
Yeah.
so you're teaching
Yeah.
them how to
Hmm.
communicate. I can see how beautifully this would work for teachers in schools,
Yes.
because we can't control the environment that that child comes out of, but we can certainly control the 7 hours that they're in our elementary classroom. We
Yeah.
can totally control that.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I did find after I started meditating was that I was more compassionate.
Yeah.
I was more compassionate. And sometimes it seems like I, I didn't, there was those two parts of my brain that were going, Fran, are you putting on an act or
Right.
is this real? And it would be like, it was real. My
Mm-hmm.
compassion for the same situation that continued to happen over and over and over
Yeah.
because children are like that. I was more compassionate. So I can see how your program would be so beneficial
Mm-hmm.
for individuals as
Yeah.
well as the next generations
Mm-hmm.
that are
Yeah.
coming up.
Yeah. I would love at some point to be able to bring my work into schools with kids, right? I mean, I have worked with a lot of administrators within schools, and teachers as well. And I mean, with my children, it really is fun, to be able to share what I know with them and to see how they interact with others based off of that. And I think I think the one piece though with this work is that it really is something you have to want to do. And so I think about, I've worked with some teenagers and they really wanted to do it. And that's why I think it worked. Um, so there'd have to be major buy-in, I think, for it to work out.
I was talking to a kindergarten teacher
Hmm.
yesterday, and I believe that kindergarten teachers have the most difficult job in the
Oh,
school,
yes, I
the
think so.
most difficult. And she's saying that not only are the children anxious, that parents are anxious, so
Yeah,
anxious.
yeah,
And so, what are we doing with our young parents? How do we help parents now?
yeah.
I, I,
Hmm.
I'm no longer in a school
Yeah.
setting, but how do we help these
Hmm.
people that are so anxious?
Yeah.
Rightly so. There's lots going on in the
Yeah, there's
world.
lots going on. It's true. I mean, I think that it really is learning how to change your relationship to anxiety, change your relationship to stress, right? And really learning how to trust. I think trust is a really big piece that the work that I do cultivates, because a lot of the fear that we have, especially in communication or in otherwise, is out of fear, right? Out of uncertainty, out of not being able to control a situation. And so our work is, can we expand our capacity for discomfort? Can we learn how to become more comfortable with discomfort? And if we can learn how to find calm in discomfort, then those situations aren't as scary anymore. Then we can trust more that, this person will provide if they need to provide in that moment for my child, but that it's not necessary for them to have specific instruction, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it really is teaching parents how to become more comfortable in discomfort.
I think that is probably what you've just said is the key because we have become a generation where we want the lights turned on, we just do it with our
Yeah,
phone or unlock the door from our office building, turn down the heat from somewhere that we're not even at home. We
yeah,
have so much control.
yes.
So when we don't have control over something, it is extremely uncomfortable.
Hmm. Which is why I think a lot of that anxiety passes down into the children as well, right? So, yeah.
Mhm. Do you have a success story? Can you tell us about a situation in a client's life where they've come back to you and told you what a difference it made in their lives?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of success stories, which I find, I mean, I love to receive messages about the changes that happen in their lives. Um, I mean, from, people who haven't had relationships with their families for years are finally able to reconnect and have conversations again, from, relationships, parent-child relationships, where before there was just so much fighting and arguing. And now, the relationships are so much more nurturing and open, and there's more sharing going on than there was before. Or in, work settings with people in more the executive levels with their teams starting to really see like community growing, where before there was a lot of mistrust. Now there's a lot of trust and loyalty. And, in personal relationships, marriages, where sometimes, what has ended up happening is that realization that the marriage actually um, isn't the best path forward, but being able to express that clearly and consciously, and being able to, have more of an empowered conversation around it, as opposed to one that just feels, more more isolating and disconnected. So there's so many instances, and then of just some people who have challenges speaking day to day in social situations, and then just feeling more safe in the world to be able to have conversations with people just, that you run into. So it really runs, a whole spectrum when it comes to the changes that happen. But they're all amazing. Every single person that I've worked with, amazing, amazing people.
So
Yeah.
you've got a new course that's coming out. It's called Monthly Meditation Series.
Oh yeah. So this is just really starting a monthly meditation for people to join, where we just come together and we meditate.
And it's together live.
It's live online on Zoom. Yeah. And just opening up three times for people, just whatever's convenient. I really wanted to, I did this during COVID, and um, I, after COVID, it kind of went away, and now it just feels like the right time to bring it back. So, so bringing that back I'm excited for that. So that'll start actually next week.
And it's very reasonable.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's $8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about your new book. It just came out at the beginning of this year, right?
Yeah, it did. So it's called the pause principle, how to keep your cool in tough situations. And really what it is it's taking that moment in a conversation where we usually react, right? All of us have those different reactions we kind of talked about, right? So in the moment practices to be able to help ourselves find that calm and find that safety in the moment, so that then we can choose how we show up next. So really giving ourselves that pause that we need within an interaction, a difficult interaction, so that we can then choose the right words after that.
What is soften? What
So
is soften?
soften, yeah, so that's actually the practice itself. So usually in challenging conversations, we harden, right? We really like protect ourselves and we defend ourselves. And so for us to be able to stay in a conversation, even when it's challenging, our work is, can we practice softening in that moment instead? And so what it is the S stands for sensation. So you're first really paying attention to the sensation in the body, what's happening in the body, that moment where you notice discomfort. Usually we want to ignore it or kind of push it away, right? But right now can we start to pay attention to that discomfort and identify, okay, there's like an uncomfortable feeling here. And instead of giving over to that feeling, which is when we would go into kind of shutting down or walking away, can we bring in a practice that will help us find that calm, so that then we can express ourselves? So the O in soften is owning your own discomfort, and that's really kind of learning how to self-soothe in the moment. And then the F is focusing on the present. So if we can find a way to unhook ourselves from the distraction and just find the present moment, then we're able to give ourselves that bit of breath, that bit of pause, so that we can come back to the conversation and begin again. Or another practice is T, which is turn your eyes towards the other, because usually in these difficult moments, the other person becomes more like the enemy and we want to, push away. So can we turn towards that person and really see that person as somebody that we want to be helpful to or that we are appreciative of? Can we see them with friendly eyes? And then a last practice would be N, which is need to say. And that's usually we think a lot about what we need to say to the other person, but this is more, what do we need to say to ourselves to be able to help ourselves feel more relaxed and calm in that moment, so that then we can express ourselves clearly. So yeah, so that's what soften is. It's the all the practices and the tools that are in the book to help within that one moment. They're all mindfulness practices that we can use.
Your other books are full of tools as well, full of tools and full of exercises and full of other types of grounding,
Yeah.
Grounding exercises where we put on paper, we really think about what is going on with us and why we react and how to change so that we can be a happier person.
Yeah.
So we're almost at the end of time here. How do we get a hold of you?
So you can go to my website, cynthiakane.com. You can always email me at cynthia@intentionalcommunicationinstitute.com. I know it's long, and I say that it's because you have to be intentional when you're writing it down. But you can always email, or you can find me. I'm on YouTube, or I'm on Instagram at cykane1 as well. And yeah.
And you have some free meditations available as well. Where can we find those?
So there's some free meditations on Insight Timer. There's also free meditations on YouTube. But then if you sign up for my newsletter, you'll receive the meditations that go along with my new book, The Pause Principle, How to Keep Your Cool in Tough Situations. So yeah.
And that's at cynthiakane.com.
Yeah. And there's also a 30-day pause challenge on my website as well, which is it's great because each day you get a practice to begin implementing and starting to really see how it can change things for you.
So what is your last word of hope for our viewers?
I would say just that communication is a learned practice. And if it's something that has been challenging or feels like impossible to look different for you, just know that it is a learned practice. And so you can unlearn habits and patterns and relearn new ones. And you can always begin again.
Every day is a day of learning.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Cynthia. It's been a pleasure. I've learned so much from your books. Like I am super grateful to you for the work that you put into that.
Thank you.
Like we talked about before, often it's a very hard time in our lives that really makes us shift, and then we can become our true selves, and the whole world benefits from that. Yeah. Well, thank you. And if you enjoyed listening to our show today, please subscribe. It'll help me. It'll help Cynthia get the word out that there is so much hope. There is so much hope in the world. So thank you, Cynthia. Talk soon. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye. Thank you.
This podcast and Inspired Healing Hypnotherapy do not provide medical advice. The information included here is not limited to text, graphics, images, or other material contained, and are for informational purposes only. No material in this podcast is intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice. diagnosis or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, and never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this site.